All right, good afternoon, everybody. Just want to start out by welcoming you to the Higher Education TIG Chat. We're excited to have our panelists here today to talk about STEM and higher education evaluation. Before we get started, I do have a few announcements. So we've been hosting these chats on a monthly basis. So we have the next couple chats scheduled out. We're really excited about those topics. Next chat will be next month. We'll put the link in the chat. Will be about planning for evaluation 2026 and really bringing people together to possibly collaborate. So. We'll be sending out asking for some feedback, but we'll talk about some of the proposals and maybe we can find ways that we can get together and help maybe possibly form groups or breakout groups so that we can submit some proposals as well. And following that, we're excited in April to have a presentation on AI. So we're really thankful for those presenters. We're also going to be sharing in the chat if you are ever interested in helping to lead one of these TIG chats. You don't have to be an expert. Basically our format is just coming with some ideas that are applicable to higher education, a short, maybe 15, 20-minute presentation, and then we just have a discussion. So if there's a topic you're interested in, you'd be interested in facilitating one of those chats, we're going to drop a link in so that you can complete it. We would love to have you present. It's a great opportunity. It's a great opportunity to engage. So I'm going to turn this over to Matt for him to kind of facilitate this STEM discussion. And we want to thank all of our panelists for being here and participating.
All right. Well, welcome everybody. This is the Higher Education TIG Chat. We do this, as Kevin was just saying, we do it monthly. And today's session is on the National Science Foundation program evaluation in higher education. So that's kind of the nice little connection between things. We're certainly very happy that maybe some of you are here from different TIGs. You haven't joined the higher ed TIG sessions before. Maybe you're from the STEM TIG or any of the other TIGs, maybe the independent consulting TIG, and this is your first experience here. We're happy that you're here. Very happy to be joined by four panelists who are all NSF program evaluators. And I'm just going to identify them right now, and I'll give them a second. In just a second, I'll give them a chance to introduce themselves and kind of launch into a little bit of background on themselves. But today we're joined by Liz Litzler, Kurt Stuke, Jess Krim, and Catherine Hendren. And they are all experienced program evaluators with National Science Foundation. And I started this off because if you know me, I have probably our firm, Goshen Consulting, supports about 15 to 20 NSF program evaluations right now. And so I'm constantly thinking to myself, what is going on? Like, I don't know what's going on. And I have frequent meetings and conversations with other people, and I still don't know what's going on. So the best way to find it out what's really going on is you invite a bunch of your friends together and you ask them questions and you let them, well, maybe I suspect some of them will say, I don't know either, but we're going to find out. Anyway, so I'm going to start off. I'm going to ask Liz to start off, and I'm going to kind of go down the road. And they've all seen these questions ahead of time, but I'm going to read it to make sure I get it right. Liz, could you provide some background on your experience with NSF program evaluation in higher ed, of course, and then maybe talk a little bit about how your roles and how things have changed over the years that you've been doing it, and then we'll go on to Kurt and Jess and then Catherine after that. Go ahead, Liz. And you're on mute.
Yep,
Yeah,
working
it
on
happens.
it.
You haven't started a Zoom meeting until we've got that
I
experience,
know.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's real now. So, hi everyone. I'm the director of the Center for Evaluation and Research for STEM Equity at the University of Washington in Seattle. I've been doing research and evaluation, but mostly evaluation for the last 20 plus years. And most of our work at CIRCE, which is how we say our acronym, most of that work is in the broadening participation in STEM space. I lead my own evaluations, but I also mentor my other staff members who do evaluations. And someone asked me to pull up the number of grants we've had since I've been doing this work, and I think I'm not sure that this is a very strong number, but it's in the 160 maybe range. But currently we have about 20 projects, which is less than the 40 that we had earlier in 2025. But about 10 of those are from different NSF programs. Or no, I'm sorry, they're from 10 different NSF programs. Some of which are in the sort of adjacent broadening participation space, and some are in the more core science space. And I'm happy to share which ones if people are interested in that, but I won't do that now. The other question you asked, Matt, was about how things have changed over the course of my career. And I feel like most of what we've been evaluating, like our projects that existed before, are still sort of continuing on mostly the same paths, although some of them are saying like we can't collect demographics anymore. That's just not allowed. And there's no way to like, seems like some of those folks, it's hard to convince them that it's allowed as long, for certain reasons. Um, I mean, right now, because we're all grant funded, we've been hustling a ton to write proposals. So that's changed. Like the amount and number of proposals that we're writing is definitely different than it was before spring 2025. Um, and we had 11 grants that were terminated in that time period. So our workforce is quite different now. We had to basically not renew our student contracts because students were supporting us on many of our projects. And so we're down to 7 staff members instead of 15, which is where we were. So that has changed a lot, which of course changes the community that we're in. We're not getting all those new good ideas that grad students bring to the work that we do. And then I think the other thing I would say is that we've had 5 new grants come in since those terminations. I don't know how many other people are seeing, but some of them are in like we have IUs, we had 2 STEMs, an NRT, and something from ECR come through. So, I mean, I think we're seeing some stuff come through, but this is why we're writing a ton of proposals because we're not sure like what proportion of our normal stuff is going to come through compared to the past. So I'll pass it on.
Yeah. Yeah. And I just have to comment real quick. Like it, I think I have that same experience of you're canceling us over here, but now you're asking for more over here. How much can I believe? But anyway,
Mhm.
I don't want to go down that rabbit hole. I'm going to let Kurt introduce himself.
I am Kurt Stuke. I'm based in San Antonio, Texas. And for those of you who recognize me, we are in the process of closing my small business. It's an LLC with S Corporation taxing because we started a nonprofit called the Center for Program Evaluation and Research. So essentially, I'm taking my for-profit company, moving it into a nonprofit, and that's our new news. Over the last 12 years, we've had 37 NSF contracts. 19 of them are current and 18 have been completed. And we've had 11 different NSF programs. So Liz, I was just like listening to your acronyms, and I've got the alphabet soup also. We've worked with 17 different universities in those last 15 years. So a good variety of things, but we are completely independent, an external evaluator kind of thing. How's my experience changed? I was a PI for an NSF SBIR grant back in 2000. I was absolutely clueless as to what NSF was and what it was all about and so on. Now that I've had this experience, it's like, yeah, I really didn't know. And I was not aware of the differences of the programs, that the STEM and IUS and NOIS and so on, that they really do have certain requirements. Like STEM, the students get scholarships, but they don't have to participate. There's no requirement for them. And so when it comes to the evaluation, we may get 50% of them to start to participate, but we've learned a lot about the differences of the NSF programs. What happened last year, we lost 3 of our grants. Fortunately, the others were able to continue. We had a couple that, while they were terminated, NSF said you can run the next year because they had essentially a no-cost extension. So we'll lose a couple more this year. So that helps. But we got impact. We actually lost more NIH funding than NSF funding. And in April of last year, I was losing sleep about, do I need to lay off any of my other 4 coworkers? And I did the budget numbers and I didn't have to do that. And I got to sleep at night again because as a business owner, I feel responsible for them. And that was good. We made it, but it was close. Okay, thank you.
Jess, take it away.
Hi, my name is Jess Krim. I am a subcontractor with Goshen Consulting and also have my own independent practice, JSK Consulting. As a recovering academic, I've been exposed to NSF funding in a variety of ways. I've been a PI, a co-PI, proposal evaluator, and I was also a finalist for a program officer position. So currently, I'm working as an evaluator. I've been doing that for the last 2.5 years, and I work on. I was listening to you, Liz, say 160. I've only been. I'm only working with. I've worked with about 12 of NSF projects, but all of the work I do is focused on NSF projects currently. So, working with NOICE, STEM, IRES, BSCER, granted funding lines. And let's see, how has my role changed? I think early on, I think I didn't realize how all of those different roles as a faculty member would influence my work as an evaluator, but it does. Last year, we lost two clients that I worked with due to administrative priority changes. They were actually functioning, they had been funded, they had been awarded funding, and then probably less than 1 year into their first year, it just got pulled. Um, the other thing is, I have worked a lot with NOICE, the NOICE funding line, and that RFP is currently on hold. It was supposed to be rewritten and put out for public comment last August, and that came and went. And so a lot of the people that I work with in that community, they're not able to get a hold of their program officer. So it's been really challenging for them. So part of my role is kind of like talking with them and supporting them with that.
And Jess, you didn't mention the NSF project that you had with an institution that
Oh,
goes just they had a they were not canceled by NSF. They canceled themselves. They went under.
mhm.
Limestone University in South Carolina. They just closed their doors, and your, your project just went away. So funny. Well, not funny, but it was
Bad timing.
it was an interesting spring last spring, wasn't it?
Yeah.
With that, I'm going to go on to Catherine. Why don't you share a little bit about yourself?
Great. So I'm Catherine Hendren. I've been in evaluation for a little over 10 years. But really in the last kind of 5 or 6 years, I've been working on NSF grants. So I sit in a slightly different position. I am in the College of Natural Sciences at the University of Texas at Austin. So I oversee our institutional research team. And so my team sits in the dean's office, separate from any individual, departments or scientific teaching research units. But a part of our portfolio is serving as the external evaluator for our NSF grant. So I've worked on mostly smaller awards like career awards, but also STEM, expedition, NRT over the last few years. And I'm in an interesting position where this is about a third of the portfolio of all the projects that my team works on. But we have the benefit of being, kind of partially funded by the college and partially funded by grant funds. So it gives us some flexibility, especially for those faculty members who want to have an external evaluator, need to have an external evaluator, but don't have a whole lot of budget or have an evaluation plan or require an evaluation plan that requires access to like internal and institutional records. So we can be really helpful in some of those situations. Much bigger projects, we just tend to not have the capacity to take on. So we gladly pass those folks on, but some of these smaller projects. And I will say, I think over the last year, and we're based in Texas, so there's been some shifts in priorities and what's allowed and not allowed over the last few years. We had some legislation passed a few years ago in the legislative session that was targeting some DEI practices and things like that. So we've been kind of shifting and changing, I think, for a little bit longer time period, and definitely seeing a shift in what we encourage people to emphasize in terms of their broader impacts, and in their education plans, but also kind of reiterating what Jess said, fielding a lot more just kind of questions and panic, I feel like, over the last year, people who can't get in touch with their PI. And I feel like I'm playing a little bit more of that, just general problem solver role as opposed to just evaluator, as people can't get in touch with a program officer, or we wrote this proposal and it got approved based on some things that aren't priorities now or aren't allowed now. How do we shift? How do we realign, while still staying true to what's meaningful to these PIs and these researchers? So yeah, I think kind of navigating that with a lot of flexibility has been a hallmark of the last year, certainly.
I want to echo something you said, Catherine, and I think it's an important role that we play as program evaluators, particularly for the National Science Foundation or any agency. What we frequently do, and you talked about that, we serve as a program evaluator for multiple projects, and frequently we're doing this over many, many years, and so we get a lot of exposure to different problems and things that come along. And so we principal investigators, some are very experienced, but a lot of the ones that we work with are very new, or they're siloed. They don't know what else is going on. And I think we play an important role along those lines. In fact, we're not going to go down this path because that sounds like an entire new higher education, higher ed TIG chat for another day. But I think it's an interesting thing that you brought up, and the role that we've had to play over the last year, just helping understand what's going on for people, because well, we may not know, but we know a little bit more than most. Anyway, just for my panelists, I'm going to go on to the next question. I know you guys have all seen this. If you're interested in answering it, I'm not going to call on each person to answer each question in a row like you could do it. I'm going to ask the question. If you're interested, just unmute yourself and I'll know you're interested. And that'll be a good signal. You don't have to raise your hand. You can just unmute yourself and I'll say, oh, hey, why don't you answer that question? But the next question I had for the group was, in general, and without consideration for DEI work or any other special populations that were impacted by changes in federal funding priorities, that's the backstory. Do you think that NSF will grow, maintain, or decrease the requirement for evaluation on many of the NSF funded projects in higher ed? So the basic question is are we going to have more work, the same amount of work, or less work going forward? And how do you know these sorts of things? But if you're interested in answering that question, feel free to raise your hand. Liz is laughing. She's not raising her hand. Go ahead, Jess. What are your thoughts?
I was hoping to go last because it's really just speculation. I mean, I was just making a couple notes before we came on. And to me, my role as an evaluator with NSF has always seemed like a one-off, right? Do they read our reports? Like, do they know about us? In that case, I would think that we would be included in the same way. Or they might see value in our profession and increase the need for it. Or they could want to cut costs and leave us out if that impacts that. Or because there's no ICR associated with an independent evaluator or external evaluator, they could make it stronger. So yeah, it's anything. That's what I think.
I have a running joke when I'm asked about the future. If I could predict the future, I would be living in Las Vegas, making lots of money that way. I think the key for us is to watch what's going on in the federal appropriations and authorization bills. Because while the initial words were that there's going to be a lot of cuts, Congress has put back research funding. It's not as much as it had been in the past, but there are some words about like NIH funding's being restored and such. The general trend I'm seeing, and again, this is speculation, is that there's a lot of funding for basic research in the AI, the computer science, the quantum physics areas that are more the basic research. The basic research tied to business and industry, those tend not to require evaluators as much as the education, training, professional development kinds of things, which is the space that I work in. So I think we're going to see a decrease in the education-related NSF funding, but more funding toward the basic sciences, the basic research that typically doesn't have an evaluation part component to it. That's all guesswork, though.
Oh, I was going to call on Liz, and she quickly put herself on mute. She doesn't. She's decided she doesn't want to have an opinion.
No, I can real quick. I feel like it's going to be status quo in terms of actually whether or not the existing programs are going to remove evaluation requirements. I think the program officers that are there want to keep as much as they can. Like, I think they're doing a lot of hard work behind the scenes. The ones that are still around are doing a lot of hard work to make sure that some of these programs stay in some sort of form. I don't think they want to remove evaluation, but I think there are these um, pulling, like two sides pulling of like we need to decrease our costs, as Jess was saying, but also like everybody's talking about accountability. Wouldn't evaluation be good for accountability? Oh, well, you know, who knows?
Are
Who knows who's deciding this stuff?
and this might be a broader conversation, but we've always believed in accountability, and it seemed to be forever this perspective that accountability is important. If we're going to spend $1 million on this grant, we should know that it's working. But is accountability still the same at the same level of have that same level of respect? In some ways, I feel like people don't want the accountability. I'm not sure I understand what's going on. What are your guys' thoughts?
One of my notes, and I had similar notes of like, increasing calls for accountability, decreasing budget, and those things tend to be at odds, I feel like, in terms of the evaluation. But I I wouldn't be surprised, and I'm kind of anticipating based on conversations that are happening here that the nature of evaluation or what we're asked to measure or what we're asked to show, I could see changing. I mean, I'm having people more and more ask to try to show more like cost benefit analysis, ROI kinds of things, especially for education related initiatives. So, that was just one note. I feel like it could go either way in terms of funding, but I wouldn't be surprised if kind of the nature or the ask in terms of what we're measuring and how we're measuring outcomes and impacts and what's considered impactful evaluative information shifts.
Does anybody have any more thoughts on this question? I was gonna switch on to the next question. I feel like as a particularly NSF or a US Department of Education is pretty much the same, that a lot of times things fall into my lap. Like, hey, we're writing this grant, it's due in 2 weeks. And would you like to be a program evaluator for it? And so that's how I find out about my opportunities. And I'm lucky when we get 6 or 8 weeks notice, but frequently it's the 3 week notice. So the question that I have for all of you is, where do you get your information about your current and potential future contracts? And how do you know you can trust that information? And maybe feel free to take this question in any way you want, because I think if I had to rewrite that question, I'd rewrite it a little bit differently. But how do you find out about what's the opportunities out there? Particularly, we're all working on the quote unquote soft money in the soft money game, and it's been a wild roller coaster over the last year. But how do you plan for, and how do you learn more about how you can develop the opportunities for your practice or your operation?
I can
Go
start.
ahead, Liz. I'm playing the teacher here where I kind
Yeah.
of do the quiet game.
No, I understand. I was trying to see if anyone else wanted to start anyway. So we've been around for a long time, and I've been doing this for a long time. So I feel like a lot of our projects and information about projects comes from trusted network people that we've worked with before. Sometimes our current collaborators or former collaborators will recommend us to new people. We trust that a little bit more than the random people that just like heard about us somehow and connect with us. But at the same time, I'll just say, like, I feel like we used to do more trust but verifying. And I feel like we're doing less verifying these days because we're just want to take whatever we can get, even if there could potentially be issues with some of those things. To like, just to be fully honest, like, I maybe I'm not supposed to be saying these things. Sometimes I say things that I'm not supposed to say.
So
Um,
I don't want you to overstep your role or say anything that you shouldn't say. But I mean, I understand what you're talking about. There are certainly clients who reach out and say, I know you've been working with me for the past 3 years. We're going after this new opportunity. Well, that's as trusted as it can be. I mean, I've been working with them now for 3 years. And then you've got the people who reach out and you get this email from the associate vice provost of an institution you've never heard of in a state you've never been in, asking about this program that you know a lot about. And you're like, well, who's this person? Justin and I just had this exact same experience. We both independently got an email from an individual. And of course, I can tell I can speak from my side. I was like, yeah, absolutely, I'd love to do this work. This is exactly the kind of work I want to do. And then I realized, well, it was probably a mass email to like probably 50 or 60 different people like Jess and I. Anyway, I
yeah.
know where you're coming from on that, Liz. And so maybe a couple years ago, I might have said, well, I don't know who this person is. I'm not interested, but I responded for sure. But I see
Yeah.
where you're going with that.
Yeah, I mean there are times when we don't even meet the PI and we're like writing a proposal for because we're working with their Office of Research and they are the go-between, and so we never even meet the PI. So how do we know we're going to work well with them? But we're not saying no to those kinds of projects.
And I know that as I was formerly with a university and you're with a university. And so typically a lot of your opportunities come from within your institution. And that's the role that you're playing. That's the mission of your organization. So, I mean, I would imagine that a lot of things are coming from University of Washington for you. No, not a lot, huh?
No, our center has far more of our funding comes from outside sources than within the
Interesting.
university, actually. People
Okay,
don't.
so wait, so when you work on a National Science Foundation grant, it may be coming from a wholly different institution. A
It's
lot of them
almost
is.
it's almost
Is it?
always a sub award with another institution. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
great. So the question to the rest of the panelists, if you feel like chiming in, is about how do you get your information about your contracts? Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, I will say your point about like timing definitely resonates, and we get a lot of the like, my grant is due in 3 days and now I need an evaluation plan. Can you help me? Which like even as someone who has a hard time saying no, like there are just things that are feasible and things that aren't. But one of the things that we tried to do to bring more people to, kind of this expertise was we started hosting workshops or, kind of in the spring semester, late March, early April, well in advance of those like kind of summer, some of those summer grant deadlines where we would advertise like come sit down with us for 2 hours and like get your evaluation plan written in that time. We'll sit down with you. So depending on how many people register, either do like one-on-one, sit down if it's just a couple people, or have people work in groups and do things like have people say a potential outcome that they want to, give a presentation on what outcomes are to start, and then have people, write one of their outcomes on the board and kind of workshop that together so that people can get a sense of how to get to a concise and clear outcome. But that, the idea is that we kind of move through from outcomes. We do a little logic model exercise and then kind of into potential measurement. And so that's been really helpful for us in terms of just getting that first touch. Some people leave with that evaluation plan and they are like ready to go. Other people come back and want to have more follow-up, but it's a nice way to like get some information out there. Again, like we're a small team and we have like 800 faculty in our college. So, trying to find ways to reach a lot of people with some information and get that first touch so that when they write us, hopefully not within days, but closer to their deadlines, they have a little bit of something already started.
When I was at the Research Institute for Studies in Education at Iowa State, it was always an interesting September. We would come back and get started in August and September, because we would find out about grants that were funded that we didn't even know we were written in on, because faculty would say, "Oh, well, RISE was the acronym for the center," and it was, "Oh, by the way, we got funded. You've got funding to do this thing that." We're like, we didn't even know that was submitted under our name. It's such a crazy time, particularly with faculty who just had a working relationship with the institute, with the center, and it was just a funny thing. But yeah, I thought maybe that was going to be specific to that experience, but I still do get our proposal is due on Thursday. Can you help us? And they're calling me on Monday, and I'm like, I often do. I want to give some space to Kurt and Jess. Go ahead, Kurt.
My record is 23 and a half hours from the time I was contacted, "Can you be our evaluator?" to the time it was due to NSF. They had written the proposal, they'd written the evaluation plan and said they needed my biosketch and my letter. And I'm like, flags. So had some conversations that next morning. And of course, they did not get that award. But that's my all-time record, 23 and a half hours. About getting information, because we're an external third-party independent evaluator, we rely on the university PIs to contact us. We also know the folks in the proposal writing functions. And so Carlos and Monica are two people that send me an email going, "Kurt, we got another one," kind of thing. So that's been a good feat for us. We trust them. We've worked with them for a while. But we pay attention to the NSF program officers, their office hours, the webinars for new solicitations, the mailing lists, because things have changed so much in the last 12 months, 13 months, that we're going to those webinars for new solicitations because things have changed. We don't know how much they've changed. Some haven't much, but others have. So we are paying attention to those. We're going straight to the NSF sources.
So that's you're talking about how you kind of promote yourself too. This is a marketing technique of going to the office hours and saying, "Hey, I'm Kurt Stuke, San Antonio nonprofit," the whole bit. You give kind of like your little speech, and then you find that that's an opportunity. People reach out to you. So I think that's a great strategy, Kurt. I'm glad you shared that. Jess, I see you've unmuted yourself. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is a marketing strategy, but I think also it really helps you understand and be able to better serve your current clients. I honestly, the only thing I would add to what Kurt said would be like newsletters, right? So signing up for newsletters to get those information pieces. And I wanted to emphasize, Kurt, what you said about red flags. I think that comes in really handy when you're looking to see, well, is this a good contract or potential proposal opportunity? Is it rushed? Are they asking for more than you would want to give before even meeting them?
I had a repeat client, one I had worked with for like 8 years, said, "Kurt, what can I get for $2,000 for an evaluation?" And I said, "A lot of volunteer time." He wrote back with a new budget. But anyway, yeah, there's just, you can't at that.
One thing speaking of newsletters, one of the things that Cersei is trying to do is we are starting a newsletter of our own quarterly, potentially. We're going to try to share it out with our current, former collaborators, supporters, all the people on our network, just to kind of keep our name in people's brains, um, and hopefully provide them with some useful information. But that is something that in the past we never felt like we had to do, really any marketing of our organization, but now we do. So I really like the workshop idea too. Catherine, I may steal that.
No, I think that's great. I think anytime you can get in front of people and demonstrate evaluation skills, teach people, you're reinforcing who you are and what you can do. I think that's a great strategy, Catherine. I see that we're about 40 minutes past the hour, and I want to make sure we get a chance to open things up. So I'm going to ask both questions, and anybody who feels free, they want to chime in. The last two questions are, in what ways has your practice changed or your center changed over the last year? Clearly a lot of disruption over the last year. And then maybe any parting thoughts that you may have or advice for your colleagues here. So anybody who wants to take that away, feel free. But again, the two kind of key pieces are how has things changed? And I think we've covered some of that already, but also what are some advice and some parting thoughts that you may have? Go ahead, Jess.
Yeah, I think, yeah, I can mush them both together. I'm torn as to whether this is like a rough patch, or if this is part of the new normal. And I think back to like COVID and how it so greatly impacted how some of us work. And things didn't go exactly back the way they were when that was over. So I don't expect everything to go back the way it was before at the end of 2028, like DEI and otherwise. Um, I think advice I would have would be to diversify and be flexible and be creative. And and one of the things that I've really looked at is not to let your identity be shaped by the work you do, rather than let your work be a function of the expression of your identity.
I'm glad we recorded that. We need to put that as our catch line, right? Jess, thanks for that. We'll give you credit. Go ahead, Kurt.
So we've diversified our portfolio. We just had to. And in terms of numbers of grants, NSF is still our number one. In terms of revenue, we're getting far more funds from foundations. And that's one where I think they're picking it up a little bit in terms of really understanding what evaluation is and how it's important for their grantees to understand evaluation, so on. So we're moving more in that space. And hence, that's why we formed the nonprofit, so that we can work in that space more. We can still do the NSF work, but we can get funding from the foundations easier as a nonprofit. So to diversify is what we've done, what I recommend. I do have a question for the university folks. And Liz, you said that you're seeing more proposals. I'm seeing less. And last year there was a drop off. This year's even more of a drop off. But there are two NSF programs, Granted and RITEL, Riddle, that don't have solicitation due dates. They're open-ended, right? And I'm working on one team that said, we're going to submit in September. Oh, we're going to submit in October. Oops, November. They still haven't submitted it because there's no deadline, and I'm not seeing a level of motivation. And there's a team that's working on a granted proposal that's that same way. It was supposed to be in December and now end of February, and I haven't seen enough traction on it. I don't think it's going to happen even in February. The question I have, is there less motivation on the part of the faculty in higher ed now than there was before? I'm an outsider, so I can't see it. I just can't tell.
I feel like faculty are risk averse to some extent, and I feel like what we're seeing is that they're afraid, they're hearing that funding is less, and they are not feeling like you said, the motivation, like, you know, I think they understand that there's probably going to be potentially going to be some, I mean, there were big discussions about um, whether people are promotion and tenure is going to happen in the same way, and that there might have to be um, some changes made to the criteria for promotion and tenure. And so I think they're feeling like they want to wait it out and see what really happens. It doesn't feel like they are on the same hamster wheel they were on before, I guess, if you will.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I talk to a lot of faculty who really want to be submitting grants, but the kind of unknowns and the instability, I would say they're motivated, but they're kind of demoralized. I mean, there's a lot of feeling like, yeah, I can write a proposal, but it doesn't matter, or it's not going to get funded. And so I've seen, our office to some extent, but also like our central, research office, trying to encourage people to move to some of these areas where we are seeing increases in funding if, they have research and scholarship in those areas, and trying to kind of provide a lot of information to clarify, yes, broader impacts have changed a little bit, but guess what? Like, so in Texas, some of the new legislation around DEI, prevented selection into programs based on certain, immutable characteristics. And most of our programs were never doing that to start. So, some of the changes that we've seen is, people hear things and it goes around the rumor mill, and I think people get really discouraged. And so there's some of this also that I feel like is an information campaign of like, your program was never doing that. That's one of the changes that I'm trying to encourage people is like, write explicitly. Whereas like we may not have put explicitly in a broader impacts or an evaluation section before, like, right, this program is open to everyone. Everybody is welcome, everybody is accepted. We don't select based on any personal characteristics, those types of things. So but I do think there's like kind of morale has been impacted with faculty that we see. And I will just say, like, on kind of closing thoughts, one of the things that our research office has been emphasizing in one of the workshops that they've been doing is encouraging PIs to find a broader impacts identity, right? The same way that you have a research pipeline, that's your kind of technical or scientific research, like think about those areas of broader impacts of education, STEM workforce that are really important to you, that are personal to you, and then let's work from there. And I think that's also kind of helping to, for some people, reignite a little bit of that spark, that motivation. And that's been an interesting and energizing conversation for some of the faculty that we work with.
Thanks for that, Catherine. And I know faculty are in a funny position, and universities are in really crazy positions, particularly around indirect costs. So they're going to get the full negotiated rate, or are they going to be at a 15% rate? And there's a huge difference for how you can run a research operation on 15% versus whatever the negotiated rate was. And anyway, we won't go into the debates on whether that's right or wrong. But with that, we are going to do an open chat. I'm going to stop the recording in just a second. Kevin, before I go, do you want to say anything about higher ed TIG again before we close up?
So no, I think mainly just I want to thank all the panelists for their participation in this discussion. I think this has been really helpful. Please make sure to click the link if you're interested in presenting at a possible future session. And also, if you're interested in one of our other upcoming sessions, please click the link in the chat. Like I said, we have 2 coming up in March and in April. One is on proposals for evaluation 2026, and then April we'll be talking about AI. So please make sure to register, and hopefully we'll see you again in the upcoming months.
Okay, and I want to thank our panelists again today. Feel free to give them a little bit of applause. You can do it however you want to. You can literally do it, or you can find the little, yep, just like you see. Oh, that's beautiful. I love how you guys are all doing that. Thank you so much for that. So I'm going to stop the recording, but don't go away just yet. So see you guys out in YouTube land later, but everybody stick around.